Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this. It's fairly informal tonight. I've got a list of people who've brought a poem and those I've allocated poems to, and I've not got a particular running order. But that said, I think we'll start with it's Amy, actually. Have you had a chance to look at it, Amy? I'll give you 30 seconds. Amy's one is, it's Annunciation. It seemed appropriate to start with Annunciation, and yeah.
Annunciation by Denise Leverton. We know the scene, the room, variously furnished, almost always a lectern, a book, always the tall lily. Arrived on solemn grandeur of great wings, the angelic ambassador, standing or hovering, whom she acknowledges, a guest. But we are told of meek obedience. No one mentions courage. The engendering spirit did not enter her without consent. God waited. She was free to accept or to refuse, choice integral to humanness. Aren't there annunciations of one sort or another in most lives? Some unwillingly undertake great destinies, enact them in sullen pride, uncomprehending. More often those moments when roads of light and storm open from darkness in a man or woman are turned away from in dread, in a wave of weakness, in despair and with relief. Ordinary lives continue. God does not smite them, but the gates close, the pathway vanishes. She had been a child who played, who ate, who slept like any other child, but unlike others, wept only for pity, laughed only in joy, not triumph. Compassion and intelligence fused in her, indivisible. Called to a destiny more momentous than any in all of time, she did not quail, only asked a simple, "How can this be?" and gravely, courteously, took to heart the angel's reply, perceiving insistently the astounding ministry she was offered. To bear in her womb infinite weight and lightness, to carry in hidden finite inwardness 9 months of eternity, to contain in a slender vase of being the sum of power, in narrow flesh the sum of light. The bring to birth, push out into air, a man-child, needing, like any other, milk and love, but who was God. This was the minute no one speaks of, when she could still refuse. A breath unbreathed, spirit suspended, waiting. She did not cry, "I cannot, I am not worthy," nor "I have not the strength." She did submit with gritted teeth, raging, coerced. Bravest of all humans, consent illumined her. The room filled it with its lights. The lily glowed in it, and the iridescent wings. consent, courage, unparalleled, opened her utterly.
I think Debbie, if you wouldn't mind, yeah, thank you. You want to introduce?
This poem is called Christmas by John Betjeman. The bells of waiting Advent ring, the tortoise stove is lit again, and lamp oil light across the night has caught the streaks of winter rain. In many a stained glass window sheen from Crimson Lake to Hooker's Green. The holly in the windy hedge, and round the manor house the yew, will soon be stripped to deck the ledge, the altar, font and arch and pew, so that the villagers can say the church looks nice on Christmas Day. Provincial public houses blaze, corporation tram cars clang, on lighted tenements I gaze, where paper decorations hang, and bunting in the red town hall says Merry Christmas to you all. And London shops on Christmas Eve are strung with silver bells and flowers, as hurrying clerks the city leave to pigeon-haunted classic towers, and marbled clouds go scudding by the many-steepled London sky. And girls in slacks remember Dad, and oafish louts remember Mum, and sleepless children's hearts are glad, and Christmas morning bells say come, even to the shining ones who dwell safe in the Dorchester Hotel. And is it true, this most tremendous tale of all, seen in a stained glass window's hue, a baby in an ox's stall, the maker of a stars and sea, become a child on earth for me? And is it true? For if it is, no loving fingers tying strings around those tissued fripperies, the sweet and silly Christmas things, bath salts and inexpensive scent, and hideous ties so kindly meant. No love that in a family dwells, no caroling in frosty air, nor all the steeple shaking bells can with this single truth compare, that God was man in Palestine and lives today in bread and wine.
I think we're hard to know, show appreciation. I think we will at the end because I actually went to a poetry reading in Salford University a couple of weeks ago, and I left halfway through because the reading was. They were just these were people who had written their own stuff. But anyway, this is great. Could I invite Michelle, please? She's got one of R.S. Thomas's, I think.
This is R.S. Thomas's poem, The Absence, and it's his description, if you like, or his feeling about Advent. It is this great absence that is like a presence that compels me to address it without hope of a reply. It is a room I enter from which someone has just gone, the vestibule for the arrival of one who has not yet come. I modernize the anachronism of my language, but he is no more here than before. Genes and molecules have no more power to call him up than the incense of the Hebrews at their altars. My equations fail as my words do. What resources have I, other than the emptiness, without him, of my whole being? A vacuum he may not abhor.
Now, I'm going to invite Les to come forward. Les often quotes to me pieces of literature that is memorized, but it's not memorized tonight, I don't think. But, I think any of you who've attended Mass on a Thursday evening will know that Les really is the Brian Blessed of our parish readers, aren't you? I mean, you read with passion and it's the dark poem, so let's be ready for this one. Thanks, Les.
His wife had died, broken-hearted, he cried in the street. So I gave him a hug. It must have been a decade ago. Now he has died, at the first cold winds blow, still trying to grasp the phantom wife that lay by his side and made his life just so. Like a tortoise, he withdrew into his shell. What looked like toughness was just an inner hell, till heaven rang the bell.
So we've got two Paulies. We've got a Pauline Dickinson, please. Oh yeah, thank you.
My poem is unique because I have the poet here present with us. And the poem is called Faith. My faith is my saviour when long days are grim. God's always beside me and I lean on him. I'm never alone if I have faith and believe. He's there when I'm happy, more so when I grieve. Have faith in your neighbour, your family and friends. They'll be there to surround you, whatever life sends. Be faithful to them in their hour of need. The glow of your caring will help them succeed. The faiths of the world, too numerous to name, have one goal in life. They all seek the same, the worship of God, his glory and praise, and the reward of his presence at the end of our days. By Margaret Lever.
Thank you. Nicola, do you think you could, I would say follow that. It was lovely, that. Thank you.
I'm a little bit nervous about reading tonight, and I just wanted to say a thank you to Father Peter for arranging such a lovely crib festival and this evening, and being aware that all of us at this time of year have got unique thoughts and feelings as we experience the season of Advent. So I just needed to say that, and hopefully it'll help me read this next poem. The winter is cold, all spent in keeping warm, has joy been frozen too? I blow upon my hands, stiff from the biting wind. My heart beats slow. What has become of joy? If joy's gone from my heart, then it is close to you who made it, gave it life. If I protect myself, I'm hiding, Lord, from you. How we defend ourselves in ancient suits of mail, protected from the sword, shrinking from the wound. We look for happiness, small, safety-seeking, dulled, selfish, exclusive, interned. Elusive, evasive, peace comes only when it's not sought. Help me forget the cold that grips the grasping world. Let me stretch out my hands to purifying fire, clutching fingers uncurled. Look, here is the melting joy, and my heart beats once again. And the poem is called The Winter is Cold by Madeleine L'Engle.
The next recital is going to come from somebody who's signed up if needed. Well, Pauline, you're needed. I want you to know that. And it's visitation, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
Visitation by John F. Dean. Thank you. Sometimes when I wake, wolf hour, the dirt, between high tide of darkness and the return, I will question benevolence. I will ask, what of the all-at-once love words of Annunciation? At noon, near the eucalyptus tree, I will wonder, what of the wrung-out cries of a man, writhing in agony, nailed through wrists and mid-feet to a rough-hewn timber, the agonies we suffer? What of them if it is all pointless? It was primo tempora, a herod journey. Miriam made from Nazareth to Jerusalem, a girl, scarcely woman, 3 months pregnant, hurried through desert heat, past ribald nomads, bandits, wanderers, to come to the hill country of En in Karim. Spring vineyards, violets opening, the terraces ripe, the trees, life coursing through seed pod, vine flower nest. It was spring too, for us, the pilgrims climbing. That day we were old hawks on hot thermals, grateful for ice cream, coffee, and still yearning for the world's perfecting, grieving at the everywhere of human depredation. Who will hold on to a deep down gracefulness? Under the scum and stumbling, who imagines still the jubilant fullness of bells at noon as they ring out over the valleys, and the wonder in an old woman's voice when she called out a hearty greeting, Miriam.
I'm intrigued with the choices as well that those of you who've selected one for us. This is quite thrilling for me. So, Brendan, you have a poem for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Peter. This poem actually has been chosen by John Daintith, who I visited today. Fortunately, he can't be with us, and so I said, if possible, I would read this for him. And a poem that really speaks very much to him is one written by William Henry Davies, who's a Welsh poet. It talks about modern life, the progress of civilization to modernity, with the detrimental effects on all of us. It snatches simplicity away from those of us in the modern age. And according to the poet, nowadays all that we need really are care and comfort. One does not have the leisure to enjoy natural lives, but in the poem, W.H. Davies upholds the importance of nature and how it helps one to keep his spirit alive. So, Leisure by William Henry Davies. What is this life if, full of care, we have no time to stand and stare, no time to stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as sheep or cows, no time to see when woods we pass, where squirrels hide their nuts in grass, no time to see in broad daylight streams full of stars like skies at night, No time to turn at beauty's glance and watch her feet, how they can dance. No time to wait till her mouth can enrich that smile her eyes began. A poor life this, if full of care, we have no time to stand and stare. Thank you.
Thank you. Please pass on our gratitude to John when you're with him. Yeah, thank you. Kate has a poem as well, I think. Yeah.
This is a short but joyful poem about Advent and the anticipation of the birth of Jesus. And it's called Christmas Song. Above the weary waiting world, asleep in chill despair, there breaks the sound of joyous bells upon the frosted air. And o'er the humblest roof tree low, a star is dancing on the snow. What makes the yellow star to dance upon the brink of night? What makes the breaking dawn to glow so magically bright? And all the earth to be renewed with infinite beatitude. The singing bells, the throbbing star, the sunbeams on the snow, and the awakening heart that leaps, new ecstasy to know. They are all dancing in the morn, because a little child is born.
Jim, that's the one I'm looking for. There we are. Well, he was ducking his head, I think, at this point. So this, in a way, this has reached the stage of mentioning this is where the band wants to turn up, but this is reached the stage really of the no room at the inn sort of element of the Christmas story. It's going to be well done here.
Poems is The Lodgings by George Mackay Brown, No Room. The stones of the desert town, flushed and star-filled wave, night steeples down, from the pub door here and there, a random ribald song leaks on the air. A Roman in a strange land broods weary leaning, his lance in the sand. The innkeeper over the fire, counting his haul, hears not the cry from the rain. The rummaging in the till grumbles at the drunken shepherds dancing on the hill, and wonders, pale and grudging, if the queer below will pay the lodgings.
Now, our next reader put the word hopefully next to her name. I don't know whether that's the name of the poem or whether you were just hoping you might be here, Reggie. And have you got one for us? Yeah, thank you. I've got great photographs of Reggie dancing with Elvis Presley when we had Jimmy Cricket here, do you remember? Was it irrelevant? There you go.
A song for a Christmas tree. Cold and wintry is the sky, bitter winds go whistling by. Orchard boughs are bare and dry, yet here stands a fruitful tree. Household fairies kind and dear, with loving magic, none need fear, bade it rise and blossom here, little friends, for you and me. Come and gather as they fall, shining gifts for great and small. Santa Claus remembers all when he comes with goodies piled. Corn and candy, apples red, sugar horses, gingerbread. Babies who are never fed are hanging here for every child. Shake the boughs and down they come, better fruit than peach or plum. 'Tis our little harvest home. For though frosts the flowers kill, though birds depart and squirrels sleep, though snows may gather cold and deep, little folks their sunshine keep, and mother love makes summer still. Gathered in a smiling ring, lightly dance and gaily sing, still at heart remembering the sweet story all should know of the little child whose birth has made this day throughout the earth a festival for childish mirth since the first Christmas long ago. It's by Louisa May Alcott.
John, if you'd like to come forward now. John, as many of you know, keeps everything working here as sacristan together with Kath, and yeah, he's got me out of a few pickles. One of them is George Everyone. This is a chap, George Every, who was at the seminary I studied at. He'd been an Anglican brother in a place called Kelham near Southwold in Nottinghamshire, and his father was an Anglican vicar, and George was an amazing man. He was a friend of the Inklings, the Oxford crowd, who, you know, like C.S. Lewis, and that used to meet in the pub in Oxford that I used to pop into once in a while. Never met an Inkling, but I felt like I had after a few drinks. But George used to every Christmas write a poem on the incarnation or an aspect of it. And you were really lucky, and I was one of the lucky guys who got this piece of paper always cut skew, and it was his typewriter, and eventually some of his works were published by the seminary, but this is one of his.
Nativity. Rocked in her arms, she heard the flesh. Articulate, the words speak with his fingers. Bless the border of her dress, commanding with his voice, uplifted in her mercy to rejoice. Our own original sin is anger at the way our lives begin. This he endured. He made distress, hunger and weary, helplessness cry for compassion, and impart a new dimension to the heart. His final cry of utter loss, she understood, who at the cross recalled to ear and sight his voice and face at night. The second one is The Moor by R.S. Thomas, Shepherds. It was like a church today to me. I entered it on soft foot, breath held like a cap in the hand. It was quiet. What God was there made himself felt, not listened to, in the clean colours that brought a moisturing of the eye, in movement of the wind over grass. There was no prayers, he said, but stillness of the heart's passions. That was praise enough, and the mind's cessation of the kingdom. I walked on, simple and poor, while the air crumbled and broke on me generously as bread.
Those of you who came yesterday evening will recall that I read a very lengthy poem called The Jesse Tree and it was by Sean Hewitt, and I explained how he was related to I was really about to say, of all these, it's about I read one of your Sean's poems last night, yeah, called the the Jesse Tree about the death of his dad. It's the most beautiful poem. We read that last night. And I was saying I'm so proud of him, as I know his family are. And I think, Adrian, you've got a poem by Sean to share with us as well, haven't you? Sean dug one of the first sods on the ground here when we did our groundbreaking service then. And I wish he'd written a poem for us then if I'd known quite how good he is. Thanks. You want to introduce him?
So this is a poem about winter. To me, it's a beautifully spiritual poem, excuse me, about the poet's relationship with nature and his feelings of belonging, his oneness with it. And he describes in the poem how his breath joins the fog with all the breaths of the natural world in the woods. And it's a very profoundly peaceful poem, which I think gets us reflecting on perhaps our own breath in a very life-affirming way, and a way that maybe makes us pause on the miracle that is our creation itself. So it's called Tawny Owl in Fog. There it is again, that willowed cry that takes me from myself, lifts my skin, asks the white breath inside me to float a while into the wood. Behind me, the sound of twigs snapping and hairs ambling over the wet leaves, and again, insistently, the owl uncurls its sound. Through the fog and my body answers. Between each tree, the shattered water is lilting. It makes its own stillness, its own quiet land to move through. And the night is so cold it hurts my skin. My fingers are all bone. I rub the cold between them and cannot feel it. And the owl, again, its feathers stroking the skin of my neck. I can feel myself lifted out of the wood. Taken home over the snow-peaked forests of Scandinavia, the dark, rolling sea. And in the lamplight, each black branch is hung with jewels of half-frozen water. My breath floats off into the fog, joins it in the wood. I imagine the owl's tunnel of song. And then the fog is the breath of all the plants and damp trees, the hares, the dark soil. And again, I hear it. Everything is breathing.
That brings me to the end of the list. Was there anybody else who had brought a poem and hoped to share it? By all means do. Okay. So I read a long poem. Have you got one? Let's hear it. Come. Oh, is Adrian's going to read this one? Is this
The one with the sore throat gets to spoil the poem. Excuse me. I'm not even familiar with this one, so here goes. A Christmas Childhood. One side of the potato pits was white with frost. How wonderful that was. How wonderful. And when we put our ears to the paling post, the music that came out was magical. The light between the ricks of hay and straw was a hole in heaven's gable. an apple tree with its December glinting fruit we saw. O you, Eve, were the world that tempted me to eat the knowledge that grew in clay and death the germ within it. Now and then I can remember something of the gay garden that was childhood's. Again, the tracks of cattle to a drinking place, a green stone lying sideways in a ditch, or any common sight, the transfigured face of a beauty that the world did not touch. My father played the melodeon outside at our gate. There were stars in the morning east, and they danced to his music. Across the wild bogs his melodeon called to Lennons and Callans. As I pulled on my trousers in a hurry, I knew some strange thing had happened. Outside in the cow house, my mother made the music of milking. The light of her stable lamp was a star, and the frost of Bethlehem made it twinkle. A water hen screeched in the bog. Mass-going feet crunched the wafer ice on the potholes. Somebody wistfully twisted the bellows wheel. My child poet picked out the letters on the grey stone. In silver, the wonder of a Christmas townland, the winking glitter of a frosty dawn. Cassiopeia was over, Cassidy's hanging hill. I looked, and 3 whin bushes rode across the horizon, the 3 wise kings. An old man passing said, "Can't he make it talk, the melodeon?" I hid in the doorway and tightened the belt of my box-pleated coat. I nicked 6 nicks on the doorpost with my penknife's big blade. There was a little one for cutting tobacco, and I was 6 Christmases of age. My father played the melodeon, my mother milked the cows, and I had a prayer like a white rose pinned on the Virgin Mary's blouse.
Thank you for choosing that, Mary. It was lovely. Having read a long poem last night, I'm going to read, to conclude, a short poem by Seamus Heaney. But there's a strange link to my mind between this and Sean's poem, because Sean was drawing from his experience of being with his father through the sadness, the poignancy of his own dying. But it's about the bonds of affection which are deep and alive, and that came through very much. The other great poet, I think, of the relationship between a son and a father is Seamus Heaney, and I think Sean would quite like to be compared with Seamus Heaney, I think, with his Irish connections. But Seamus Heaney does some lovely poems about his father. I mean, he has one, I think it's called The Plough, and he sees his dad digging the turf up. And then he realizes he has inherited something from his dad, because he realizes the pen with which he writes is his way of continuing. But he never was one of these people who, because he became famous, ever lost his sense of the dignity, the absolute dignity of manual labor and working the land. And in a way, this poem is not about his father so much, but a blacksmith. But I chose this one to link it with Jesus' relationship with Joseph, actually. I mean, totally understand it, why Mary gets sent to stage with Jesus at Christmas and Joseph seems like... but again, I just have this sense of how, what impact and how Jesus surely learned to value the manual labor aspect of our human lives. And I know it's not just done by men, but it's, I just think it's a bonding sort of experience. So So this is called The Forge by Seamus Heaney, and it really is just a paean of praise to a blacksmith, but he thinks of the anvil, he uses the anvil as he speaks of it as an altar, which in a sense brings all these poems together, it seems to me, and certainly in my perspective, and you'll have picked this up over the years, is the significance of stepping slightly outside of churchy language in order to allow our wider human experience to get validated and blessed. And I think poetry helps us to do that. I'm not disparaging churchy language, but I just feel we lose a sense of how wonderful the lives yourselves have led and are leading, how full of dignity in their very different ways. This is the privilege of being a priest, is to just tap into a sense of what you're all about and what moves your hearts. And that, for me, has been what we've been celebrating together this evening. So perhaps we can think of this as all of us. The Forge. All I know is a door into the dark. Outside, old axles and iron hoops rusting. Inside, the hammered anvil's short-pitched ring, the unpredictable fantail of sparks or hiss when a new shoe toughens in water. The anvil must be somewhere in the center, horned as a unicorn, at one end and square, set there, immovable, an altar where he expends himself in shape and music, sometimes leather-aproned, hairs in his nose. He leans out on the jamb, recalls a clatter of hooves, where traffic is flashing in rows, then grunts and goes in with a slam and a flick to beat real iron out, to work the bellows. So thank you all for taking the time to come along this evening and to share. Perhaps it's a kind of an exercise we could repeat again in different seasons. Just as I say, to see how language can help us to sort of express our instinctive faith as well. I think we've got some I know we've got some refresh. I brought a bottle of port. I brought a bottle of, or 2 bottles of port, didn't I? But you're hoping to take one home, aren't you? I brought a bottle of sherry. I've got some, it's non-alcoholic, the IKEA version of the Glühwein, their one. I've got some of that. I'll say we've got some of that and some hot chocolate, I hope. So if you've got time to stay and have a chat about things, then come and join us through that now. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everybody, for